Good afternoon and welcome to our monthly breastfeeding webinar series. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the Indiana WIC program, and St. Vincent's Health. It's a product of the Indiana Perinatal Network in collaboration with the Indiana Breastfeeding Coalition. And I wanted to welcome today's speakers. I'm very excited about today's speakers because I'm quite a community worker and I like being out in the community, seeing what people are doing, and often get a lot of questions about how to organize financially or how to organize their work, how to engage their community. And so a couple of people that I know a lot about this kind of work really solicited them earlier this year to share what they know with us. So today's topic is coalition complications and nonprofit solutions. And our speakers today are Anne Marie Neely and Marianne Martin. And just a little bit about them. Anne Marie is a board-certified lactation consultant who has been supporting families in Bloomington, Indiana to breastfeed since 2002. Anne Marie wears many hats in the lactation world. She currently works in the lactation department at St. Vincent's Hospital. Coincidentally, that just happens to be one of our sponsors in Indianapolis, and at the IU Health Bloomington Hospital. She also does home visits through her private practice in Bloomington. In addition to all of this, she is the co-founder of Flourish, a nonprofit organization that provides free breastfeeding support in Bloomington in the form of a drop-in clinic. Her areas of interest around breastfeeding include infant tongue tie, supporting employed mothers, and postpartum mood disorders. She currently serves as the president of the Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition. Our co-presenter today is Marianne Martin. Marianne is a PhD and an IBCLC. Her training is in cell biology, but motherhood led her to a second career as a lactation consultant. It afforded her the opportunity to blend her scientific training with her fascination with the biology of breastfeeding. Marianne loves to learn about breastfeeding directly from moms and babies, and to that end, she has been a La Leche League leader since 2005 and a board-certified lactation consultant since 2011. In 2015, she co-founded Flourish, a nonprofit organization that provides breastfeeding support for families in Monroe and surrounding counties. Marianne is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition, and it's with great pleasure that I introduce our two speakers today.
Hi, this is Marianne. Thank you, Tina, for introducing us, and thank you to Marquette Hansen for providing the tech support for today's webinar. And as always, we give many thanks to Tina Cardarelli for all her support of breastfeeding coalitions in the state of Indiana and for inviting us to present here today.
And this is Anne Marie, and we want to welcome you to our presentation and thank you for joining us. This presentation is going to be a step-by-step tutorial. It's not going to be very exciting, but hopefully it'll be very useful. It's our hope that you'll go back to it. It's going to be recorded and available to you, and that you'll use it as a resource as you begin to form your own nonprofit breastfeeding coalitions. Just to give you a little bit of information about us, we met almost 17 years ago when our children were babies, and we've been providing breastfeeding support and teaching together for almost 15 years. So this is just another one of our projects that we're doing together, and we hope that this webinar is valuable to you. So we just want to give our, oops, can you,
moment, please?
There we go. We want to just have a disclaimer right up front. So this is Anne Marie, and I am a lactation consultant. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a nonprofit consultant.
And again, Marianne is here, and to be clear, I am not a lawyer, and I am not a nonprofit consultant. I'm a lactation consultant. However, we as regular people figured out how to make our coalition a small nonprofit organization. And after today's presentation, if you have any questions or concerns, you should consult a lawyer or a nonprofit consultant. Lawyers will often help a small nonprofit pro bono, which means for free, and you may already know a lawyer in your community, like that's a breastfeeding lawyer or a breastfeeding friendly lawyer. So today we have 3 objectives. After the presentation today, we're going to walk you through how to create a nonprofit business in the state of Indiana for a county breastfeeding coalition. You'll know how to get an IRS tax ID number to start a checking account. And once your business is started and has been registered with the IRS, we'll be able to help you figure out how to maintain your nonprofit business status with the state of Indiana Secretary of State and to remain tax exempt with the IRS.
So we want to give you a little bit of history of our breastfeeding coalition in our community. It was formed in 2007 by lactation professionals from a lot of different places in our community. Bloomington Hospital, Monroe County WIC, Bloomington Area Birth Services, and La Leche League were the main organizations, and then we had lots of other community members and volunteers. The focus of our coalition at that point was mainly on special projects. Specifically, the coalition organized the Monroe County Fair Lactation Station from 2007 to 2011, and then we also had a big campaign called the Restaurant Campaign to make breastfeeding, make restaurants more breastfeeding friendly. So we used a lot of volunteers for those projects. From 2013 to 2014, our coalition transitioned away from IU Health providing direct support to the coalition, and they no longer handled our money. So we didn't have anywhere to put our money, although we didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't really that much of a problem at that point. And then in 2014, we reformed the coalition with more emphasis on community involvement and parent involvement. And so to that end, we changed our meeting times to the weekends. We started meeting at Bloomington Area Birth Services, which is a community-based organization. And then more recently, we're meeting at a library with a big room instead of a conference room. So it's more family-friendly, so families can attend together. And when we reformed, we decided we needed some money to do some projects, and we sold some T-shirts as a fundraiser, but we didn't have a place to put the money. And we sat on that check from booster.com for months and months because we couldn't open a bank account for it. And so now you know the real reason we became a nonprofit is because of T-shirt money. In June 2015, we established the Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition as a nonprofit business in Indiana, and we had a place to put money. We opened a bank account with our nonprofit status, and we were back in business for World Breastfeeding Month, and we had a 2015 Live, Love, Latch event where we sold more T-shirts. In 2016, we restarted the Monroe County Fair Lactation Station, which had been on hold while we kind of sorted everything out with the coalition. And now we have a permanent indoor air-conditioned room. It's lovely. And we had our second annual Live, Love, Latch event in August.
Okay, so we wonder if there's some organizations out there, some coalitions out there that this might be useful to be able to have a bank account and be able to do small fundraising and do the projects in your community. And that's why Tina invited us to give a little bit about how we did this for Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition. There are some initial steps you have to do before the real steps, before the major steps to forming a not-for-profit organization. These first steps are to find at least 3 people to form a business, and that's the requirement for the state of Indiana. But preferably maybe 4, 5, 6 people that have been kind of part of your core for your coalition for a few years, people you know well, who'd be interested in helping with this. You need to agree on a business name for your coalition. You know, it doesn't need to be fancy, something that people will know, and it's going to get the words incorporated at the end of it. Agree on bylaws for your organization. These are going to be like your internal rules for how your business operates, for how your organization operates, and they'll just be for you to have on your own. They aren't going to go anywhere official. They have things like when your fiscal year runs, like does it run from January to December or from July to June? They'll have how you elect board members, how long the terms of your board members are. They can be very simple, and we're going to provide you with some websites that have templates for those. Then you would have a meeting where you elect your official board of directors. Those would be your president, your vice president, your treasurer, and your secretary. You may already have a similar structure in your coalition or not. You'll approve the name officially for your organization, and you'll approve your bylaws. You'll agree on whose names and addresses of these founding members of your business. You'll agree on whose names and addresses will be used for business and tax purposes. And you'll want to get an email account to use for working with the state and for the federal government for your business and taxes. All these steps are free. They just take a little bit of time. If you already have a core group of members and you started with a template for the bylaws that maybe someone has edited at home and gotten in a little bit of shape, then within 1 or 2 coalition meetings, you should be able to agree on all the fine points of your bylaws and get everyone set and get your board elected and be ready for the major steps in forming your not-for-profit organization.
So there are 4 major steps, and the steps that Marianne just went over, those are things you want to have done and in place and ready to go before you tackle these big steps. This is going to be the bulk of our presentation, is walking you through each of these 4 major steps so that you understand exactly what you'll need to do. Number 1, you're going to create a nonprofit business in Indiana. 2, you're going to get a federal tax ID number. It's also called an employer identification number, an EIN. And you do all that online from the Internal Revenue Service. Then you're going to open a checking account at a local bank for all your t-shirt money, and then you're going to maintain your nonprofit business status with the Indiana Secretary of State and federal IRS. So we're going to dig right in with step 1.
Okay. So for, excuse me. Just a moment. So for the first step, that's creating a nonprofit business in Indiana. It's also called, excuse me, excuse me, everyone. It's also called filing your articles of incorporation. You may hear it that way. It only takes about 15 to 30 minutes if you have everything on hand to do it, and it's done online, and there is a fee of $32. So usually getting 2 to 3 board members together in person would be easiest, but 1 or more of those members could be easily available on the phone, and you're going to have the following things ready. Your coalition business email address handy, the names and addresses of 3 board members, including your business address, whose home things are going to be mailed to. That's the principal mailing address, business address. You'll need someone to have a credit card that they're willing to put the $32 filing fee on. And you're going to need the text for the purpose and dissolution clause that are going to go into the document for the next step. And those will be in your bylaws as well. You want to have them handy to cut and paste into the document we're going to look at next. You're going to be going to the Secretary of State of Indiana's webpage to start. If you look over on the left-hand column, the smaller arrow points to the Business Services Division. You can read all about how to start a business in Indiana there, but we're going to jump right into the right-hand column where the bigger arrow is pointing at Form a New Business. And that takes you to a sign-in page. Again, they provide lots of information. You see that big blue like sideways arrow that has step 1, step 2, step 3, or start, up, maintain. on your own time, if you're at this website, you can look at those drop-down menus, and they give lots of information, but we're going to jump right in with signing on. So that arrow up there, you'd click the sign in button. And once you're signed in, it will lead you into the steps to form a new business. When I sign into our account now, it brings me right to our Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition dashboard. You'll eventually have a dashboard like this where you can do all sorts of different tasks for your business. What I did once I got into my dashboard is I had the option to start a new business as well. So I'm going to go to the next picture here. This is what you will look like when you first log in and use your business email address to set up an account. It'll be, if you look up in the top left-hand side, it says start a new business. You'll be on a page like this. There's interesting things you can read here. They're really good about telling you what different terms mean in the gray bars on the right. But we'll go straight to the next button. Okay, and since it would be your first time using this InBiz web interface for a new business or for businesses in Indiana, you would be wise to choose the Guide Me button for the Business Wizard, and that'll take you step by step through how to start your business. We click ahead. So I'm not going to go into why you click all these buttons. You're just going to click all these buttons when you get there. As I said, I am not a lawyer. So when you first get to this Start a New Business page, there'll only be one question up there. And as you click Answers, it brings up all these 5 different things that you have to answer. So you just click Yes to the first one, No to the second one, the top button on the third one, you click Nonprofit at the 4th section, and then down at the bottom, your business type will be in a drop-down menu, and you're going to choose Nonprofit Corporation. And you can't see it, but there's a Next button, and that will bring you to the next slide. And here's where you're going to type in the name of your business that you want to have, and I've made up one that would fit for those of us in Indiana. It wouldn't work for anyone from Michigan watching today, but here you would put in like Indiana County Breastfeeding Coalition, Inc. And you'd click the button to say check availability, and I can pretty much guarantee you no one's going to have already started a business with the name of your coalition, I would guess, in there. And you'll get a green sentence that says, based on the initial search, it appears the name is available. And that would be enough for you to proceed. I think they do a really thorough search before they approve everything at the end, but chances are you'll be fine. You'll move on to hit Next, which doesn't show in my screenshot. And this brings you to the business information section of your application here. If you look up across the top of this screen, they give you sort of a timeline or the different steps that they're going to bring you through. And we're at the very beginning, business information. This is a long page, and I'm going to show you several sections of it going right down through the whole thing. At the top, you get to put in the email address that you want all your business correspondence to go to. So for an example, I made it secretary@icbcinc@gmail.com, and you confirm that. Then the type of corporation, you're going to be a public benefit corporation. Down at membership, you're going to probably have your business or your not-for-profit will probably have members. That's something that's in your bylaws. So in Monroe County, the members for ours are officially the board, but you can have different structures. But yes, you'll probably have members, and if we just move down the page, you come to distribution of assets. This is another place where you are just going to cut and paste, thank you, where you're going to cut and paste in the exact language that you need to explain how you would get rid of the money if you ever ended your business. And I'm going to move to the next page, which shows that exact language. And we got this language from the IRS. It's important for eventually asking to be a tax-exempt organization. And the bottom line is it just says if you fold for any reason, you're not going to use the money for private benefit. You're going to give the money to another not-for-profit or to a state or local government. You're not going to benefit from it you can't all just divvy up the money at the end as the board. Okay. So this language has to be exact. You don't want to make any mistakes there. Then further down that page, the period of duration for your new business is perpetual, meaning you don't know when the end date of it is yet. The effective date is usually the day you're filling out the form. If you make it a later effective date, you won't be able to open a bank account until the effective date. Okay? And then you'll put in the address of where you want the mail to go for this business. It'll be the official business.
Choose your most stable member.
Yeah.
That's not going to move.
Right, who's unlikely to move, someone who's like either rented in a place for a long time or they own their home and they're not going anywhere. Now you can change this later. It's not, but you will have to pay money if you change it. So try and make it as, a person who checks their mailbox. That would be good too. Okay. So we talked about a post office box, but that would be up to your coalition. Someone has to go check a post office box, and you have to pay for a post office box. So for us, it worked out best to have it be, it's actually my home. Okay, if you want to send junk mail to Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition, we get that too. Then statement of purpose is a little bit further down. This is another place where you have to have exact language, and I have an example of it here. The first sentence has to be exact. And this is determined by the IRS, what they want in people's, in organizations, articles of incorporation and bylaws. The second sentence would be a little bit different for each organization. We wanted to put in a little bit about what we do. But the top part about charitable, religious, educational, scientific purposes, yada, 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 that has to be the same. Okay. All right, once you enter all that business info, you're brought to the registered agent info. So the registered agent is the person who is like the go-to person for the business for the state of Indiana. And here I've already entered the information. Our registered agent today, hypothetically, is Who's Your Mama, and she lives at Lactation Way, Bloomington, Indiana. The way I entered her in this was to select the registered agent as an individual, and you click Create Agent, and it brings up a pop-up where you fill in the information for that person and enter it. And then that brings you to the incorporator's info. Oh, I should say registered agent, you can change that person's name in the future, but it will probably cost you money to update. But when you come to incorporator's info, this person's name and address is someone that you will not be able to modify or delete later. I think this is the way the state can try to find someone who was at the inception of a business in the future. So this is the one person, their name's going to be on this for as long as this business is in existence. And here are incorporator, same thing, you just sort of fill out the information and click Add Incorporator, and we put in Who's Your Daddy, and he lives at 2 Lactation Way. I actually had a address more specifically for him. Okay, and then the next thing you add in, if we look across the top, we're on principal info. So the principal or a principal is a person who's an officer or director for your organization. There's a little pop-up menu. We made the president the principal in our organization, and so you choose the title, and then you can fill out the principal information, and this can be changed in the future as well for a fee.
Everything is for a fee. Everything.
And so our principal is, the president is Who's Your Beautiful Baby at 4 Pumping Place in Bloomington. And let me just double check one thing here. Okay. So I don't have any more screenshots of in this InBiz forming your business because I didn't want to actually form this business. So I had to stop at this point. But if you look at the top there, the next things would be you would add any attachments if you had any, and you won't if you cut and paste it into the document with your purpose and dissolution statement. You shouldn't have any attachments. It'll let you review everything, and you'll want to make sure there are no errors. You'll go on and electronically sign, and you will pay using a credit card, and then it will be done. And they will email you a pending acceptance of your articles of incorporation, and within a few days you'll get an official document emailed to you that are your articles of incorporation that are filed with the state of Indiana, and you will have made a business.
So you must be sure to use the exact language for the purpose and dissolution, which is the part that we had spelled out a couple of the slides that said exact. So you can cut and paste that if it's possible from the webinar once it's recorded, or just type it. It's only a few sentences. If you find any errors later and you have to amend anything in your articles of incorporation, you'll have to pay to change it, and it's somewhere between $20 and $30. You can go in and make as many changes as you need to, but each time you go in, you're going to have to pay for it. So we had to do it. We had the wrong language in our articles at first. And then when we learned the correct language from the IRS, we've spent a lot of time on the phone with the Secretary of State and the IRS. So, once we corrected it and we amended our articles, we attached the correct paragraphs, and everything was fine. But it did cost us money. The good thing is, though, if you don't make that mistake and you do have to make a change, like a legitimate change, it's not that much if you need to go in and do that. But you can avoid it, hopefully, by learning from our mistake and just use the right language from the get-go. Okay, so we went over step 1. Now we're into step 2. Get a federal tax ID number. This will take you about 15 minutes in theory, and it's free. So you're going to need a computer with Adobe Reader installed, internet access, and a bunch of other information. You want to make sure that you're using a computer with Adobe if you want to get your number immediately. That will let you get your tax ID number right away. If you don't have it, it could take up to 4 weeks to get it through the U.S. mail. You're going to use a Social Security number for one coalition member, and the Social Security number does not link your personal information and business information, so it's safe for someone to do that. And then a coalition business email address. And we didn't mention before, but there are a lot of places to get free email addresses, and we use Gmail for all of our organizations. And then the business address, you're going to want to have that on hand, and it's the same as in step 1 of the Articles of Incorporation. So here's the thing about the 15 minutes. You only have 15 minutes to do it. So it's a timed web page. And if you don't complete it in time, you'll have to start over. So you want to make sure that you have everything ready to go to save yourself some time.
When I did it the first time, it took me 3 times. And the 4th time, I think, was when I made it through, because there were so many questions, and we're going to lead you through it so you'll know what to choose at each page. And with any luck, you'll only have to take 1 time or maybe 2, but it's not a big deal. Like, they don't save the information if they kick you out, if you time out. You just start over and you get faster and faster. Okay. So you want to start at the IRS page. The web link is up in the top box, or you just Google applying for an employer identification number online. There's plenty of information you can read here at some point, but we're going to jump right in and apply online now at the big arrow. And again, there's interesting things you can read about employer identification numbers if you have time, or you can just begin an application. And we're going to go through this really quickly. We are often other in this form, as you'll see. So down at the bottom, we're going to click View Additional Types, including tax-exempt and governmental organizations, and you would hit Continue after choosing that. And then on the next page, you would click Other Nonprofit Tax-Exempt Organizations and Continue. You're doing this for banking purposes.
T-shirt money. T-shirt money.
Excuse me. who's the responsible party for the nonprofit organization. We've chosen individual, and I believe that would probably be the case. It's not for an existing business. Then we selected individuals, so you would put whoever's filling this in. Usually this would be the treasurer of an organization, and you would click that you're the responsible party and that you're a member or an officer of this organization. Although a third party could do it. Sometimes if you have an accountant that's affiliated with you and you want to have them do it, you can have them do it. Okay, and then this is where you're going to put in your official business address for the business you just set up in Indiana. And they ask for phone number. You could choose whoever maybe the treasurer is, in case I doubt they'd ever call you, but they might. Okay, let's see. And you'd hit continue after you filled out what was appropriate for you. Oh, and this is where you would need to, the person before it has to put a social security number, and that's where that comes in. Okay, so you'd fill out what you need to on this form, and then the next slide. Here's where you put in the name. Well, you'll just follow what I did before. I got myself a little confused. I don't know if I jumped up one or not, but here's where your business name goes in, and it would be Indiana County Breastfeeding Coalition, Inc. If you're doing business as a different name, it gives you that option. Otherwise, just leave it blank, and it asks for your county, your state, and your start date. That would be your effective date would go in there, whatever the day you made your business start on. Answer no to all of these. They're things that you would not be doing as a breastfeeding coalition, trust me. Okay, on the next page, you go way down to the bottom and you click Other. This is like a type of business you're involved in. When we have chosen Other, then you have to specify a little bit, so you would click that you're an organization. And what type of organization you get to fill in. You could put something like breastfeeding support or public health. You can't have any punctuation in there, so technically when I left the slashes in between those different words there, it rejected it. So don't put any punctuation, but it just told you to do it again. It didn't kick you out of the whole thing. Okay, and that brings you to the end. And this is the point where if you had Adobe Reader, you could get your employee identification number right away. And I would suggest when you get that PDF document that you print it out and that you also save it in some way online so that your whole board has access to it. And we'll talk about that at the end, but Google Docs is one way we save things. You can also elect to receive the EIN by mail, but that will take a month, so you wouldn't be able to open your bank account for a month because you need this number.
Okay. One thing that is important to know is that as a tax-exempt organization, there are some things that you're not allowed to do. The first one is your coalition cannot benefit from private interests. So the organization can't be operated for the benefit of private interests, and no part of a Section 501c3 organization's net earnings may benefit any private shareholder or individual. And so if that happens, an excise tax can be imposed on the person in the organization. The other thing that you can't do is members can't lobby or engage in political activity on behalf of or as a representative of your coalition. So as an individual person, just because you belong to a coalition doesn't mean you can't lobby. You just can't do it on behalf or as a representative of the coalition. Okay, step 3. We're going now. Open a checking account. So this will take you about an hour. We were able to find a free checking account. We did have to pay a fee for our checks. So you're going to want to call around and find a local bank that offers free checking to Indiana nonprofit organizations. In Southern Indiana, we've had great experience with People's State Bank, but we just looked them up before the presentation, and we think they're only in Southern Indiana. Find a bank that one of your members uses and see if they have a relationship with someone there, and you might get some really good customer service that way. Find out what they require you to bring when you open up your account and make sure you have all those things ready, and decide who is going to be able to sign the checks. before you go. And then everyone who's going to be signing or have access needs to be at the appointment, access to the account. And you want to order checks with 2 signature lines. That's best practice for organization security. So you have to have 2 people sign each check, which is not the most convenient thing in the world, I'm not going to lie, but
Yeah.
it is really good for the safety of the organization, especially, you know, whoever your founding members are, you might already have a relationship with them and trust them, but you don't know who's going to be, you know, running your coalition later in time. So you want to make sure to get those things in order right from the get-go. And then you need to have your money to deposit into the account and money to pay for your checks.
Yeah, and I think 2 signature checks sometimes cost a little bit more, but it's not usually
It's worth it.
prohibitive. Yeah. Okay. So we're down to you've made your business with the state of Indiana. You have a nonprofit business. You've been able to open a checking account since you were registered with the federal government and got an employee identification number. And you're just conducting coalition business now. But there are a few things you need to do either annually or biannually to maintain your status with the state of Indiana and with the federal government. So in this first part here, we're going to look at what you need to do for the state of Indiana. And you made your, you filled out everything to make your articles of incorporation and start your business using your InBiz account, that web interface, and you can log into that when you need to. You'll get a notification from the Secretary of State as you approach your 2-year anniversary, and they'll tell you you need to file a business entity report. So you can either go into the online InBiz webpage and file that report. It's just basically saying you're still in business. And it'll cost you $22 online, or you can mail the report back in for $20. And you need to do that every 2 years. And like we were talking about before, if any of your business address or any of the people on your business, if their addresses change, you should go in and update that at InBiz. And I think you can kind of update that at the time of your business entity report as well. So it might be good if someone has just left your board, you time it to do it all at once. Now, sometimes people ask, can we get things tax-free, sales tax-free from the state of Indiana? And there is a chance you can do that. Right from your InBiz account, there's also links to go to the Department of Revenue. And you can file a form ST-105 from within that account and pay $25, and they will send you a sales tax exemption certificate. You can show that to a store or some type of service provider and ask to not pay sales tax. They have the choice whether to charge you the sales tax or not. They're not required to exempt you from sales tax, but you might choose to try and do this. We don't buy enough with Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition that it warranted paying the $25 form fee. We get a lot of things donated to us when we have events. So we have not done that, but it is an option for you. Okay, so that's how you stay safe with the state of Indiana. And then you have to maintain your tax exempt status with the federal government. You need to file taxes annually. But it is way easier than filing your personal income taxes or a for-profit business tax. When you file your taxes for a not-for-profit that makes $50,000 a year or less, you just have to file this little 990E postcard. And you'll get this postcard in the mail, and you're going to I'll show you step by step what to do in a minute, but, excuse me. You would file it 5 months after the end of your fiscal year. So if your fiscal year ends on December 31st, you have until May 15th of the following year, so within 5 months, to file your taxes. You're just going in and basically swearing that you haven't made a profit and you haven't made more money than a certain amount. You don't have to put in any specifics about your accounts, any of your balances or anything. Okay, So the e-postcard that comes in the mail to your business address will lead you to this web page for filing your 990N electronic postcard. And if you click the first blue link, it'll bring you to a page where you can find out exactly what information you need to file your postcard. So there's 8 items of basic information you need, and you click on those words, and it brings you to here's what you need to file your e-postcard. The major things are you need to know your employee identification number, which you do, what your tax year is, because some people run different tax years. So you put in the dates that your organization uses. You need to know all your basic stuff, your address, the principal officers, who's going to use this. You probably will have made, this will lead you to make an account the first time you file your taxes, and you'll get a password, and you'll use your business email address and a password to get in, and you need to use the Social Security number of someone in your organization to file the card. Okay. And you're going to swear that you made $50,000 or less. That makes you eligible to use this postcard, and you will have filed your taxes, and it only takes about 15 to 30 minutes. It's super easy. All right, here's where we get a little bit more specific. Our coalition, we have very little t-shirt money. We have way less than $5,000 per year. And that puts us in a category of small not-for-profit organizations that pass the gross receipts test. So we make less than $5,000 a year, or less than $15,000 a year in less than $15,000 in 3 years. So we just have to file that 990 each year. If we ever made a mistake and forgot, it's okay. You just have to do it at least once every 3 years. And you get to act like a tax-exempt organization, even though the IRS has never sent us a letter saying we are tax-exempt. So we act like it. And I'm going to show you something about that in a moment. If your organization makes more than $5,000 a year, but less than $50,000 a year, or if you make more than $15,000 over 3 years, you, within 90 days, have to file Form 1023-EZ. Okay, and we're going to explain that. So basically, you would have failed the gross receipts test if you make more than that, and you're not eligible to do it. So it's explained at the IRS, but I also found this really nice explanation in a much friendlier format, how it's kind of a benefit if you're one of these really tiny not-for-profits. You don't have to pay $400 and get an official ruling by the IRS. You get to do all the things of acting like a tax-exempt organization without doing that extra step. So that's what we've done with Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition.
And if you're that small, like we are, you don't have to be afraid of the IRS.
Yeah.
They're not looking to get you, and really, if you make a mistake, they're going to let you fix it.
Yeah, we've asked lots of questions and gotten really good help when we've called. But say you want your coalition's a little bigger and it's got more money, or say you want to apply for grants from very official statewide or national organizations, then you may need to have a letter determining that you are a 501c3 organization. And it's actually not that scary to actually take that step. So if you have $400 and you want to do that, which we have done for a different not-for-profit we work for, you get to fill out this 1023-EZ form. And it took about an hour. 3 of us from that other board sat down and did it. You have to answer a lot more questions, but it's all things you can figure out. And you pay the $400, and then you can get an official letter from the IRS saying that, determining that you are a 501c3.
Okay, so we've gone through all the steps, and we feel like we've probably officially told you everything we know about this process. But there are so many more resources in the state of Indiana that you can explore, and these are a few of them. With the other organization, Flourish, that we started this year for the drop-in free clinic, we use the services of IYI, the Indiana Youth Institute, and the Bloomington Volunteer Network. We went to seminars with them, and our library has a nonprofit central that is phenomenal. And I think there is a lot of information on these websites that, even though they're local to Monroe County, would apply and would be really valuable to look at. And then I would encourage you to explore what other resources you have in your own communities. And yeah, just check everything out. There's tons of stuff. Okay, other tips for sharing documents. This has saved us so much hassle, is to share everything in Google Docs for group access. So when you share an entire folder, anything that gets put into that folder through Google is shared with whoever has access to that folder. So we keep our minutes in there and all of our passwords and banking information, anything we need to have on hand, and that is easy to be passed down to future members. Bookkeeping, if you use QuickBooks, there's a fee, but there's a great cloud-based service for basic accounting called Wave, and it's really great at tracking everything. So we would recommend that you check that out if you're looking for anything like that.
And then this slide here has all the websites that we've showed you earlier in the presentation for doing the major steps. And I've also added in a few websites that can explain like what articles of incorporation are a little bit more, and what board structure is traditionally used by some not-for-profits, and what some sample bylaws might look like. You can do lots of Googling beyond this and find some really helpful things. But this is a good place to start for getting yourselves set up for those kind of very first steps that we talked about.
So since you had to sit through that very procedural presentation, we thought you deserved to see a picture of a really cute baby. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you good luck with forming your nonprofit coalitions, and I guess we'll turn it back over to Tina. It looks like we might have time for questions if there are any.
Okay. You can use the question section of the little dashboard if you have some. We might have time for a couple of little generic questions. I know nothing too specific. I do want to take a moment while we wait to see if any questions show up to just tell you that today was a perfect example of why I love this format so much. We do not pay our speakers. We seek people out in the community that we think are problem solvers and are doing great things. And I can tell you, I've worked in the community for breastfeeding in 3 different states. And one of the questions that I was always asked is, how do we structure financially? How do we structure financially? And Anne-Marie and Marianne were no different from everybody else. They emailed me one day a while back and just said, how do we structure financially, to find out that the answers that I'd been given were somewhat obsolete because banking had changed their policy. So, I think that Anne-Marie and Marianne, you can see why I highly admire their work and their knowledge and ingenuity, because they didn't stop there. They basically figured that out so that you all don't have to go and figure it out yourself. And this is really important for coalitions. A very important part of breastfeeding growth is that we're able to organize ourselves financially so that we can accept donations and we can fundraise, and it does help to finance projects that are a little bigger than free projects that we might be doing. So this was a wonderful tutorial. One of the things that I do want to say is because we are partnering this year with Indiana, with the Michigan Health Department, we actually know that we have many callers from Michigan. We have a lot of callers opt in from other states, particularly New Mexico and Kansas just seem to be big fans of these calls. And so it's hard when you're doing something specific like this. Of course, they were doing it within the state of Indiana. And so one of the questions that I have for Anne Marie and Mary Ann is, in your experience, do you think that the state part of your process would be very similar in another state, or do you have no knowledge of that at all?
So I do not know specifically. I had meant to look up a little bit of Michigan's Secretary of State information, and I didn't get a chance to. I apologize. I would guess there are very similar things. Things that might be different might be how many people have to be on a board that applies for a nonprofit business. But I think it would be quick to figure out by just going to the Secretary of State for Michigan and clicking how to form a new business. And they probably have a nonprofit area on their webpage too. I'm sorry I didn't look at it. The federal part would be the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so how many total dollars? I mean, I know that you're gave good advice for people to avoid some of the little initial problems that you had where you were getting charged with fees because you were learning. But how many total dollars do you think you would invest in this process from start to finish?
So to start with, getting your articles of incorporation filed with the state and making that in-biz account, the first thing would be $32. It's free to get the federal employee identification number. To buy checks, I think we spent about, was it $30, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And then I think we had a check from selling T-shirts for about $600. Mm-hmm. So we had a check initially to put in to the bank account when we opened it. For banks usually require you to start a bank account with so much money. Your specific local bank would say, oh, you need to put $20 in, or you need, I don't know what each bank would ask for.
So $62 basically if we didn't make a mistake. And then because we made a mistake, we had
only
to
added 20.
Added another 20 to that.
Wow. Okay. And did you have, like, who helped you? Because you said there were some free legal services. Who helped you in your process?
So when we initially started, I had asked a friend who is a mom and a lawyer a couple questions, and I didn't even know what articles of incorporation were. I was very confused about how, I was surprised. I'm like, you have to start a business? I had to really start at the very beginning of understanding that. So she gave some very basic information, and then I Googled a bunch. And then when we so we actually got the Monroe County Breastfeeding Coalition started officially, and then we started the other organization, Flourish, and we got more professional help with that, and that helped us realize we'd made that one mistake with the county information, the coalition stuff. So with that, with Flourish, we had a friend who is a lawyer somewhere else look over our bylaws for Flourish, and when she gave us advice on that, we were able to fix our coalition bylaws a little bit. She also pointed out things like needing 2 signatures on checks, that was very important. And then IYI, Indiana Youth Institute, helped us at Flourish, and we've used information we learned from that to do things with our coalition. So anyone on a coalition they could get a little bit of lawyer help along the way. But many of those initial mistakes we made, we gave you kind of the correct version as we know it to this point in this presentation today.
Well, a couple of things. There's a lot of questions and a lot of comments. A lot of people saying thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And then, of course, the question about how would this differ in Michigan, which I think you addressed. One person thought it was more complicated than they had anticipated, but they thanked you for sharing They were like admired that you got through this, and they thank you for mentoring. They thank you for mentoring others.
It's
How
quite
do you,
good.
oh,
Oh,
how do we download a copy of this presentation? I'm going to have to defer to Marquette. I know that we record it, and it is up on the Indiana Perinatal Network website, but I am unsure about getting this presentation. But I will say that if you email the general mailbox of Indiana Perinatal Network.org, we will send it to you, but I'm sure it's on our, will be on our website. Were you hesitant to use your own Social Security number?
I wasn't. We do have a couple board members that were a little bit, but I think just find someone on your board who's not. I looked into it enough. It's really just used for identification purposes at the IRS, I think. I think they don't want like a robot going in and downloading a bunch of EINs or something. That's why I think that website times out as well.
You really can't be burned. The person who puts the
Yeah.
Social Security number is not going to be responsible for anything. It's safe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This was very groundbreaking and very useful knowledge. I can't thank you enough. And to switch gears, I want to talk about 2017 and invite you to join, tell a friend for next month's webinar, which will be Tuesday, January 17th. And it will be at a new time. So we did some surveying and some polling, and we found out that a little earlier in the afternoon might be a more agreeable time. And so we, instead of 2 to 3, which it's been 2 to 3 for several years, we are moving it up from 1 to 2, so mark your calendar. People who know me know that I live and breathe MPINC, hospital quality improvement. I'm actually on a panel of experts for the CDC for MPINC. And I will be talking all things MPINC. And so I've done this will be the third time I've done this, where I take a deep dive into the new MPINC survey and give you suggestions for improvements. It's really practical ideas for what hospitals are doing to improve their surveys. So I will probably be using the Indiana MPINC, but I will try to make it very generic and probably even use some Michigan examples as well. And so I look forward to next year. Have a great holiday season, everyone. And we'll see you January 17th. And thank you for calling in today. Goodbye.